Thanks so much, Evan. It really gives me, it's a privilege to be able to introduce our next speaker here who's going to give some remarks. He's not only my boss working for ESD, he's the governor's chief economic advisor. He is our best supporter. He goes around the state. We execute the broadband as part of his economic vision that we're executing every single day. He is someone I admire greatly. He's been so great to us when I came knocking on his door a couple of years ago and asked for a home for the broadband program office. And I can honestly say that within the last 2 years we've been working for Mr. Adams, we've had more traction than all the years before combined. So please give me a warm welcome for Mr. Kenneth Adams.
Thank you, David. David makes it sound like he didn't have a place to hang his hat or something like that. It wasn't quite like that. No, it was part of, as most of you know, one of several kind of efficiency moves the governor's made to combine agencies with like missions. And in this case, the connection between David and Angela and their work on all the broadband initiatives and our work at ESD on economic development was really quite clear. But it is great to have David and Angela in our office here in Albany, so closely connected to all that we do. I have a couple brief moments before you. I almost tripped over somebody's salad because the room is so full. Congratulations, David, on great attendance this year as I tried to make my way up here to the podium. I have a couple moments to say a couple things and really try to put the state's initiatives around broadband in a broader economic development perspective as Dave has asked me to do. And you know, actually this being an official summit of the governors, but he is in New York City today. He has, Dave, prepared for you and for us a proclamation, and I'm going to give it to you, and you should keep it, but it basically, as you all can imagine, salutes today the award recipients that will be announced this afternoon and recognizes, from his perspective as our state's governor, the tremendous importance of all of the broadband initiatives that we have going on with our partners, with all of you all across the state. So congratulations for that, David, and you can, now that we gave you an office, you've got a place to put that. You know, I think by now it's abundantly clear, or certainly I hope it is, to all of you that Governor Cuomo is so firmly committed to your work, to this work, and again is, you know, that commitment comes out of the overall commitment to revitalizing all of our state's communities in terms of private sector investment and job growth and just driving economic development all across the state. And I think I was just going to mention a couple things with respect to ESD's work. You know, we do a lot of different things to help businesses come to New York and make investments and create jobs. Frankly, most of our work is more of the economic gardening nature, meaning we work with hundreds of the thousands, actually 500,000 employers in the state, existing New York State companies, on their expansions and on capturing their growth and investment here in New York. And when we do it, you know, sort of think about the things that we talk about, right? If you put yourself in the position of me or my colleagues working with companies, you know, we sit down with companies poised to expand or poised to invest in New York, and we talk about location, and we analyze and help them with workforce and labor issues, obviously having employees. We look to solve energy issues around power, depending on the type of business that it might be. We've got to deal with tax and regulatory issues at the local, state level, and so on. We, in many cases, for certain industrial users, need access to large volumes of natural gas or water, sewage infrastructure. There's all this kind of basic infrastructure that I think sometimes we take for granted, that in so many cases New York actually really kind of scores very well on, that we really have to allocate or to manage when we're working with companies on important projects, large and small, and in all sectors of the state's economy. But obviously chief among those things, when you get past the power and the water and the place and the workforce, and I got to be clear about this, we can't take broadband access for granted until we really have extended high-speed, state-of-the-art access all across the state and to every place where we think people from households, which you talk about, and businesses, which I talk about, or healthcare delivery systems or educational systems, which we all care about, till that extension is robust, is complete. I mean, the job's just not done. And you are our partners in helping to get that job done. And again, from our perspective, as the lead economic development agency of the state, we want to be able to talk about broadband deployment and broadband infrastructure when we talk about the broader infrastructure for economic development. And I made this point at our first summit last year, I think, but forgive me for repeating it. One of the most critical assets, most important assets we have as a state, and this I think is made evident by the new Startup New York program, which the governor made a very important announcement about in Rochester yesterday, but is our network across the state of higher education institutions. And what I kind of say all the time is that something unique about New York State isn't that we simply have a SUNY system, for example, but that system has this geographic distribution with 65 campuses, 29 in the CUNY system down in the city, and there's over 150 private colleges and institutions. When you look at 62 counties, a very big state geographically, over 18 million people, as I say, 500,000 employers, you stretch that out, you spread it out all across this very big state of ours, that in effect becomes a foundation. That network of colleges and universities, whether they're two-year community colleges, four-year schools, advanced research institutions, public or private, SUNY or private, CUNY or private, that is like a foundation for an innovation economy. And that's what we build on in leveraging those campuses for the Startup New York program. That's the program whereby schools create these tax-free zones for businesses, and then we work with them to attract businesses, startup businesses, and others into those zones. But that's this unique asset we have as a state. Other states have terrific, notable research institutions or state-sponsored schools, state-run institutions that are often large and concentrated in places like Madison, Wisconsin, or Los Angeles. But New York has this really great distribution that gives us, if you can imagine it, kind of this foundation for an innovation economy. But it doesn't work if that foundation, and I mean this beyond the schools, I mean to their local communities and to the areas where businesses develop, if it doesn't work, if part of that, if there's a missing piece in that foundation, and if that missing piece is broadband deployment, then it's an incomplete foundation. I'd argue that as a state, we're actually almost there, and we really do have a good, and I want to urge my colleagues at ESD who actually work with companies every day, I'm happy on their behalf to report to all of you that for the most part, the message that we get about the existing services that are required for our company and state are really quite robust and quite good. And so we're not at a competitive disadvantage in this realm as other states might be. But there's still, my point would be, there is still more to do to make sure that our technology infrastructure, and particularly our wireless and our wired and this technology, this broadband infrastructure is as robust as that incredible higher education institutional infrastructure, or as robust as our energy infrastructure. Note the governor's energy highway initiatives around electric distribution and generation, is as robust as our workforce, and New York State does benefit, again, in competitive location decisions amongst companies from, especially in upstate New York, having an experienced, tenured workforce that's really the legacy of a successful manufacturing economy. So we've got all of these assets, and built into these assets clearly is this technology and this access to broadband that's fundamental. So partly this is to say we don't take that for granted. Partly it's to say what you're working on for us is a fundamental asset. It's something we don't take for granted. It's something we leverage. It's something we absolutely have to have as a state to attract more private sector investment and more jobs in every corner of the state, particularly in areas that haven't traditionally had as much access and that you all are working on. Is Chelsea Rao here? This is a sort of a good example. And where is Chelsea? I know she's a speaker. All the way in the back. See this? Just so you know, state employees don't even get to eat. All the way in the back. No salad for Chelsea. Chelsea's a colleague of mine who works in our New York City office. Some of you may have participated in her panel. Has that happened yet, Dave? Or it did. Sorry I missed your panel, Chelsea. But Chelsea, for example, this is just Chelsea is one of about close to 50 people at ESD who work directly with companies on attraction projects or expansion projects under the leadership of John Gilstrap, who's my friend and colleague sitting at the head table here. Chelsea recently did an incentive package with Etsy, great internet-based company I'm sure you're all familiar with, founded originally in Fort Greene, moved to Red Hook, Brooklyn, not far from where I live in Brooklyn, and just recently committed to an expansion, adding actually close to 400 new jobs, 380 jobs, to move to a new and formerly kind of old manufacturing building where they used to make Squibb toothpaste in Dumbo, Brooklyn. And if you think about Etsy, for example, and you think about broadband, and this point I'm trying to make about how critical this is for economic development, obviously in that location, they have the broadband requirements that they need, or Chelsea wouldn't have been able to do the deal. No number of her Excelsior tax credits or other incentives would have overcome that obstacle. But if you think of broadband deployment in economic development terms and compare it to water, gas, or land, or even workforce, think of it as an accelerator because of the nature of the companies that take advantage of the technology. So in Etsy's case, not only are they expanding by 400 jobs and keeping all those jobs when they're a multi-state company, we wanted to make sure they kept the jobs in the state and in the city. But when I last checked, they had 35,000 craftspeople selling on Etsy. So imagine again, as a company like Etsy grows in New York State, the accelerating effect of the technology dependent, clearly, obvious point on broadband. So the other distinguishing feature here from an economic development study is that the nature of the companies, and Chelsea did a deal with Square, actually, which was not their first time coming to New York State. As you can tell, Chelsea is largely our tech specialist at ESD. But the other point I'm trying to make here is that the nature of the companies, in many cases, that benefit when we're competing against other states for major investments of tech companies that do want to land on that kind of foundation, that educational, higher education, research, innovation platform I described. The company that wants to land there, maybe even in a startup zone, like Datto, announced, moving here from Massachusetts, announced by the governor yesterday in Rochester, that is dependent on what you all do, again, think of this in the accelerator example, is likely to be the sort of company where that bit of broadband, that technology has this effect that so much more economic activity happens or is affected. Again, Etsy, the example, 35,000 people that sell on Etsy. So that's sort of point number one. Point number two is a little more programmatic and specific. And this is just, I got to do this because it's, today's the 5th of June. There's a really important date. And I don't know how much it is for you, Dave, or Angela. It's for Chelsea, for John, for me. June 16th. And this is soon, perilously close. Because I'm talking about June 16th, 2014. So June 16th is the deadline for the consolidated funding applications, the CFA, or funding applications in this year's 2014 Regional Council system. I suspect many of you know this. But I point to this because it's a reminder, please, if you're going to do a CFA application, because you come from a community, an institution, a local government that wants resources to do with your provider partners, your ISPs or others, broadband deployment, well, you got to get your homework done. And please don't wait till 3:59, because we shut our system down at 4, and then we can't reopen it for the late homework assignment. But seriously, this committees that indicate to us what the real priorities are, again, where we should allocate these resources, because there's never, unfortunately, enough to go around. Now, to make this point, and I know I'll sort of close with this, but I wanted to close with some practical examples. I wanted to mention a few of these projects that have come through the system already. And I do this with the hope that some of you might actually be in the room. That's really nice when that happens. But if not, you get the idea. Now, all told, let me say that before I give you a couple of concrete examples of what's going on, and Dave says this a lot, so you've heard it, but let's remember that Governor Cuomo has committed $68 million to specific broadband deployment projects across the state. It's the largest amount in New York State history. It is the largest amount currently in any state in the country. So that is notable in and of itself, and it speaks again to the governor's commitment to this and to the degree to which this is viewed as critical to our economic development and success, competitive success as a state. Some of that funding was committed through the Connect New York program that Dave and Angela ran, that I suspect you're familiar with, and some of it is committed through or allocated through the regional council process that I've mentioned. Again, year 1, year 2, and year 3. In year 1, now that we're entering year 4, through the system, through regional councils, there were 11 broadband projects totaling about $19 million in funding. There were 18 Connect New York projects, some of you have probably been involved in, totaling about $25 million in funding from that program, Dave. And then there's much more going on because, of course, the total, as I say, total commitment is $68 million. But, for example, for friends here, is Jamie Johnson here? Jamie runs the Steuben County IDA. For friends here from the southern tier, and again, these grants, some of them are modest, but you think of the leveraging effect they have in the communities that receive them. $672,452 for southern tier broadband. Just one example I pulled up on my way up here this morning. This project with the Southern Tier West Development Foundation will serve the western region. Actually, this is what we call the southern tier. It's really it's not our ESD southern tier region. It's counties like Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, Allegheny. It's the actual literal southern tier in western New York. The project will expand access to broadband service and increase broadband speeds through a worldwide interoperability for microwave access system to towns and villages in the counties of Chautauqua, Allegheny, Cattaraugus, and Erie, passing more than 41,000 or serving more than 41,000 households. The project will also partner with local medical clinics to enhance electronic medical records and upgrade hardware and software in libraries in Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, Allegheny, Steuben, and Chemung counties. I mean, this is sort of where it gets real, right? Here's another one from the North Country, Lion Mountain. 967,426. Dave, how do you arrive at a number like that? I don't. Dave figures this out. This is Slick. They know. We've done a lot of work with Slick Network. They're great partners. This project with Slick Network Solutions will serve the North Country region. Remember, I said this is all coming to us from our 10 regions around the state, and it's not just coming because Slick is a great partner, but because Gary Douglas and Tony Collins, the co-chairs, and all the volunteers of North Country Regional Academic Development Council pulled this one and just said, this is a real priority for the North Country. And it will have this transformative effect in our rural communities. In any case, what's going to happen there? The Lion Mountain Broadband Project will provide high-speed, low-cost broadband service in the community of Lion Mountain to 527 households utilizing fiber-to-the-home technology. In addition, this network will also deliver telephone service, IPTV service, and advanced business services over fiber. Here's one. Again, this is not like huge money in the scheme of what you all do, but they just have these very specific, focused objectives. And so here's $200,000 for Connect Thurman White Space, the Connect Thurman White Space project. This is a Warren County project, so not far from here, just northeast of Warren County. Serve the Capital District region through a public-private partnership. Thurman White Space project, this is just for one town, will provide broadband access to 89 households in the northeast area of the town of Thurman. The town of Thurman will also offer economically disadvantaged residents access to public computers and enhanced digital literacy training. And you got to eat, so I'm not going to do too many more of these. But you get the idea. From my broader comments about the importance of this technology and your work as our partners, as part of our economic development strategy for the state, as part of the competitive positioning of New York State when we seek investment from abroad and beyond New York State, which we do, when it's always more about the power and the people and the building and the dirt and stuff like that. It's about that having all the complete package, the complete broadband, access to high-speed broadband, the complete technology package as part of, again, more of the traditional physical package of the site, so we can compete for these investments. So from that broad narrative of how critical this is and how much we appreciate your work and your collaboration to a couple of these specific examples, and really in between an attempt I've tried to make to sort of tell you a little bit how it works, especially with the regional councils and the 11 projects over the last few years, with the Connect New York program that Dave and Angela have run. We are doing more and more of this, and doing it, of course, in cooperation with all of you, the technical experts and our service providers and partners, doing it under the thoughtful guidance of the regional councils. Also, I would argue the thoughtful guidance of advocates, trade associations, and real experts on some of the policy issues and technical issues. We welcome and indeed are grateful for all of your input. And at the end of the day, again, Governor Cuomo's just firm commitment to this work as a critical piece of repositioning the state and rebuilding its economy, particularly in areas that historically and unfortunately have been underserved by this technology. Thank you for letting me share these thoughts with you for a couple of minutes. I'm going to turn the program back up over to Dave. I believe a lunch is on its way, and we have a very exciting luncheon presentation for all of you. Thank you again for coming today. Thanks for your help and support.